Marcus Hammond sat across from the woman he'd hired to fix his career, wondering why she kept staring at him like he was a broken toy instead of a self-made millionaire who just sold his luxury hotel chain for 8 figures. "Your resume is flawless," Zara Lawson said, tapping her pen against the leather portfolio on her desk. 29 years old, started with a single boutique hotel in Charleston at 23, built it into a portfolio of 12 properties across the Southeast, sold for $32 million. Most career coaches would kill to have a client like you walk through their door. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "So we can focus on what's next. I'm thinking about moving into commercial real estate, maybe luxury residential developments. I have the capital now and the connections." "Stop." Zara held up one hand, and something in her direct gaze made him obey. "I don't think you need me to help you pick your next business venture." "Then, why did you accept me as a client?" Marcus had paid her retainer without blinking, a sum that would make most people gasp. Zara Lawson had a reputation in Charleston as the career coach who could turn around anyone's professional life. He'd expected her to be impressed, eager to help him climb even higher. "Because when your assistant called to schedule this appointment, she mentioned that you work 16-hour days, haven't taken a vacation in 4 years, and that you wanted career coaching because you felt empty after the sale went through." Zara set down her pen and folded her hands on the desk. "Marcus, your career is fine, better than fine, but I don't think that's what needs work." Heat crept up the back of his neck. "I didn't come here for therapy." "Good, because I'm not a therapist." Zara's voice stayed calm, professional. "But I've been doing this for 8 years, and I've learned that career dissatisfaction often stems from life dissatisfaction. You built something incredible, sold it at the perfect time, and now you feel lost. That's not a career problem." Marcus stood abruptly, the leather chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows of Zara's downtown office, illuminating the neat bookshelves and the framed certifications on the wall. Everything about this woman seemed organized, purposeful, and entirely too perceptive. "I should go," he said. "You paid for 6 sessions." Zara stood as well, and he noticed she was tall, maybe 5'10" in her heels. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a navy blazer over a white blouse. Professional, put together, and looking at him with something that might have been sympathy. "At least let me earn my fee. By telling me I need to work on my heart." He couldn't keep the edge from his voice. "That's not what I hired you for." "No, you hired me to figure out why success doesn't feel like success anymore." Zara walked around her desk, maintaining a professional distance. "And I'm telling you that no amount of career planning is going to fix that. But if you're willing to do some uncomfortable work over the next few weeks, I might be able to help you figure out what will." Marcus should have walked out. He had a meeting with his financial advisor in an hour, emails piling up on his phone, and a conference call with a potential business partner scheduled for 7. But something about Zara's directness, her refusal to blow smoke or treat him like he was special just because he had money, made him pause. "What kind of uncomfortable work?" he asked. "The kind that involves actually living your life instead of just building your empire." Zara returned to her desk and pulled out a fresh notebook. Starting with a simple question, "When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy?" Marcus opened his mouth to answer and found he couldn't. Work made him satisfied. Closing a deal, seeing his hotels thrive, watching his bank account grow, those things gave him purpose. But happy, pure, simple happiness with no ulterior motive. Exactly. Zara made a note in her book. "We're going to start there. I want you to keep a journal this week. Not about business, not about goals or productivity. Write down every moment when you feel something other than driven or stressed or focused. Joy, contentment, peace, excitement, anything that isn't work-related. This is ridiculous. This is what you're paying me for. Zara met his eyes without flinching. Your career will take care of itself, Marcus. You're smart, talented, and you have the resources to do whatever you want next. But if you don't figure out what you actually want from life, you're going to build another empire and feel just as empty when you reach the top. The words hit harder than he expected. Marcus grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, suddenly eager to escape this office and this woman who seemed to see straight through the confident exterior he'd spent years perfecting. "Fine," he said. "I'll keep the stupid journal, but this better lead somewhere useful. Second session is next Tuesday at 4. Zara walked him to the door, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "And Marcus, try to have at least one conversation this week that isn't about business, with anyone. See what happens." Marcus left without responding, taking the elevator down to the street level and stepping out into the humid Charleston evening. His driver was waiting, but Marcus waved him off and started walking instead. The historic district was busy with tourists and locals heading to dinner, the church bells ringing across the peninsula, the smell of jasmine and salt air mixing in the warm breeze. He pulled out his phone to check his emails, then stopped. Zara's challenge echoed in his mind. One conversation that wasn't about business. He looked around, feeling oddly lost despite having lived in Charleston for 6 years. A small bookstore caught his eye, its window display featuring local authors and beach reads. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd read something that wasn't a business book or market analysis. He pushed open the door, a bell chiming overhead. The shop was quiet, lined floor to ceiling with books. An older woman behind the counter looked up with a smile. "Help you find something?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "What do people read for fun?" The woman's smile widened. "Oh, honey, that's a dangerous question to ask a bookseller. What do you like? Mysteries, romance, science fiction, literary fiction?" Marcus realized he had no idea. "Something that isn't about business." "Rough day at work," something like that. He found himself smiling despite everything. "Surprise me." The woman spent the next 15 minutes pulling books from shelves, asking questions about his interests, which he discovered were embarrassingly limited, and finally pressed 3 novels into his hands. "Start with these. If you hate them, come back and yell at me." Marcus paid and left with the books tucked under his arm, feeling strange. This was what normal people did. They browsed bookstores, chatted with strangers about nothing important, bought things just because. When had he forgotten how to do that? That night in his downtown condo overlooking the harbor, Marcus opened the journal. Zara had given him a simple leather-bound notebook and stared at the blank page. After 20 minutes, he wrote, "Bought books. The woman at the store was kind. I felt normal for 10 minutes. It seemed pathetic written out like that, but it was honest. The next Tuesday, Marcus returned to Zara's office with the journal in hand, feeling defensive before he'd even sat down. She'd probably laugh at his entries or tell him he was doing it wrong. Instead, Zara read through the pages. He'd managed to write something every day, though most entries were short, and nodded. "You went to a concert, a street performer in Marion Square." Marcus shifted in his chair. "I stopped for 5 minutes on my way to lunch." "And you wrote that the guitarist reminded you of your college roommate who used to play late at night." Zara looked up. "Did you ever follow up with that thought? Contact your old roommate? It's been years. We lost touch after graduation. Because you were busy building your empire." Zara wasn't judging, just stating fact. "What happened to your other friendships from before the hotels?" Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "People drift apart, That's life. It is, Zara agreed, but it's also a choice. You chose your business over everything else, which is fine, that's how you succeeded. But now you're wondering why success feels hollow, and I'm telling you it's because you stripped everything else away to get there. So what? I'm supposed to track down old college buddies and relive the glory days. He couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. That's your professional advice. My professional advice is that you learn to be a person again, not just a businessman. Zara closed the journal and slid it back across the desk. This week, I want you to reach out to one person from your past who isn't a business contact. Have coffee, grab lunch, whatever. Just reconnect with someone who knew you before you became Marcus Hammond, hotel mogul. And how is this supposed to help my career? It's not. Zara stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. It's supposed to help you build a life that makes your career matter. You can make all the money in the world, Marcus, but if you don't have anyone to share it with or any reason to enjoy it, what's the point? The words settled uncomfortably in his chest. Marcus left the session more frustrated than the week before, but that evening he found himself scrolling through old social media contacts. Most of his college friends had families now, careers of their own. Their lives looked full, messy, real. He sent a message to Josh, his old roommate. "Hey man, long time, I'm still in Charleston. Grab a beer sometime." The response came back within an hour. "Holy shit, Hammond, thought you'd forgotten us little people. I'm in Columbia, but I'll drive down this weekend. Name the place." Saturday afternoon found Marcus at a brewery near the waterfront, nursing an IPA and waiting. When Josh walked in heavier, grayer, but still grinning that same easy smile, something loosened in Marcus's chest. "Look at you," Josh said, pulling him into a quick hug. "Still look like a damn model." "I hate you." They fell into conversation easily, Josh talking about his work as a civil engineer, his wife, his 2 kids. "What about you?" Josh asked eventually. "Dating anyone, married, kids?" "No time," Marcus said automatically, then stopped. "Actually, that's bullshit. I didn't make time." Josh raised his eyebrows. Deep thoughts from Marcus Hammond. Who are you and what did you do with my friend who only cared about his GPA and networking events? "I sold my company, having a weird existential crisis." Marcus took a drink. "My career coach told me I need to work on my heart, not my career." "Your career coach sounds smart." Josh signaled for another round. "You know, we used to worry about you. Senior year, you were so focused on making it big that you seemed to forget about everything else." "Sarah remembers Sarah Chen from our econ class. She had the biggest crush on you, but you never noticed because you were too busy planning your future empire." Marcus had a vague memory of a pretty girl with a sharp laugh who always sat in the front row. "I didn't know." "Because you didn't see anything that wasn't directly related to your goals." Josh's voice was gentle but honest. "We were glad you succeeded, man, but we also wondered if you were happy." The conversation stayed with Marcus for days. He wrote about it in his journal, about the strange nostalgia and regret that came with reconnecting. About how easy it had been to talk to Josh, to remember who he'd been before the pressure and ambition took over. At his 3rd session, Zara read his entries, and something shifted in her expression. "This is good work, Marcus. It's exhausting," he admitted. "Feels like I'm ripping open old wounds." "That's because you're finally letting yourself feel things instead of just pushing through." Zara set down the journal. "Tell me something. What made you want to start the hotel business in the first place?" Marcus leaned back, thinking. "My parents used to take me to this old resort in the mountains every summer. Nothing fancy, but it felt magical. The way the staff remembered our names, the attention to detail, the sense of escape. I wanted to create that for other people, that feeling of being somewhere special." That's beautiful, Zara said quietly. When did it stop being about that? The question hit him in the gut. I don't know. Somewhere between Hotel 3 and Hotel 12. It became about growth, market share, investment returns. Do you miss it? The original dream, Marcus realized he did. Desperately. I used to walk through my first hotel every week, talk to guests, make sure everything was perfect. By the end, I hadn't visited some of my properties in months. It was all spreadsheets and conference calls. So maybe your next venture shouldn't be about building another empire. Zara's voice was careful, like she was handling something fragile. Maybe it should be about recapturing what you loved in the first place. That sounds nice in theory, Marcus said, but I'm not exactly the small-time boutique hotel owner anymore. I have investors watching, expectations to meet. Those are excuses. Zara's directness was back. You have more freedom now than you've had in years. You could do anything, Marcus. But you're so used to chasing bigger and better that you can't see the other options. Marcus left the session feeling raw and unsettled. That night, instead of working or checking market trends, he drove out to Mount Pleasant and walked along the beach. The ocean was dark and endless, the stars bright overhead. He thought about that old mountain resort, about the joy he'd felt creating his first hotel, about the life he'd sacrificed for success. His phone buzzed with emails, but he ignored them. The fourth session arrived, and Marcus noticed things about Zara he'd been too wrapped up in his own issues to see before. The way she really listened, leaning forward slightly when he talked about something important. The small smile that appeared when he mentioned something good, like the morning he'd spent volunteering at a food bank on a whim. The intelligence in her eyes that made him want to be honest, to dig deeper. "You're doing this on purpose," he said suddenly. Zara looked up from his journal. "Doing what?" "Making me care about things again. About people, about life outside work. You're really good at it. It's my job." But she smiled, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest that had nothing to do with career crises or existential dread. "How did you get into this?" he asked. "Career coaching seems like an unusual path." Zara hesitated, then set down the journal. "I used to be a corporate attorney, made partner at 31, was on track for a huge career. Then my dad had a heart attack, and I realized I'd been so busy building my resume that I'd barely seen him in 3 years. He survived, thankfully, but it shook me. I took a sabbatical, did some soul searching, and realized I was good at helping people figure out what they actually wanted from life. So I got certified, opened this practice, and started over. Do you regret it? Never." Zara's voice was firm. "I make less money, have less prestige, but I love what I do now. I help people. I have time for my family, for my friends, for myself. That's worth more than any partnership." Marcus studied her, this woman who'd chosen meaning over money, connection over climbing the ladder. "You think I should do the same thing? Walk away from everything I've built? I think you should figure out what actually matters to you and then build a life around that." Zara met his eyes. "The business stuff will follow. It always does for people like you, driven, smart, capable. But if you don't figure out the life part first, you'll just end up back here in 5 years, even more lost than you are now." Something in her words felt like permission. Marcus had been waiting for someone to tell him it was okay to want something different, to admit that success hadn't been enough. "This week," Zara said, "I want you to do something that scares you. Not business scared, not calculated risk scared. Something personally scary. Something that makes you vulnerable." Marcus wanted to argue, but he'd learned that Zara's assignments, however uncomfortable, always led somewhere important. "Like what?" "That's for you to figure out." She handed back his journal. "But think about what you've been avoiding. What you've been too busy or too focused to deal with. Start there." That week, Marcus thought about vulnerability, about the walls he'd built around himself in the name of success. He thought about his parents, who he called dutifully every Sunday but never really talked to. About his younger sister, who'd stopped inviting him to family events because he always had an excuse. On Thursday, he drove to Columbia without telling anyone. His sister Rachel answered the door of her small house with surprise and immediate suspicion. "Marcus, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." He held up a bag from her favorite bakery. "I brought croissants. Can I come in?" Rachel let him in, confusion written all over her face. Her house was chaos, toys everywhere, kids' artwork on the fridge, the comfortable mess of a lived-in life. His nephew and niece, 6 and 4, stared at him like he was a stranger. "Kids, this is Uncle Marcus," Rachel said. "Remember from Christmas?" "Barely," the 6-year-old muttered. The words stung because they were true. Marcus had shown up for an hour on Christmas morning, handed out expensive presents, and left before dinner. He told himself he was busy, that they understood. But looking at their uncertain faces, he realized he'd been an absent ghost in their lives. "I'm sorry," he said, looking at Rachel. "I know I've been terrible at showing up, at being family, and I don't have a good excuse except that I was too focused on work to realize what I was missing." Rachel's expression softened. "Marcus, what's going on with you? I'm trying to figure out how to be a person again." He sat down on her couch, feeling awkward and out of place in this warm, messy home. How to have a life that isn't just work and more work. His sister sat next to him, and for the first time in years they really talked. About their parents getting older, about Rachel's struggles balancing work and family, about her husband's new job, about how she'd worried about Marcus, working himself to death with no one to care for him. "You were always so determined to prove yourself," Rachel said, "even as a kid. But Marcus, you've made it. You're successful beyond anything we imagined. When do you get to just live?" He stayed for dinner, helped put the kids to bed, and listened to his nephew read him a picture book about dinosaurs. The little boy fell asleep against his shoulder, and Marcus felt something crack open inside him. All the years he'd spent chasing success while life happened around him. At his 5th session, Zara listened to him describe the visit, and her eyes were bright. "How did it feel?" "Terrifying." "Good." "Sad." Marcus struggled to find the words. "Like I've been missing out on something vital and I didn't even know it." "That's because you were." Zara's voice was gentle. "Connection, family, love, those are what make life meaningful. Success is great, but it's hollow without people to share it with." "I'm starting to get that." Marcus looked at her, really looked. Zara had become important to him over these weeks, though he'd been trying not to think about it. She was his career coach, a professional relationship. But somewhere along the way, she'd become the person he thought about when he read something interesting, when he wanted to share a thought or an insight. "What about you?" he asked. "You talk about the importance of connection and family. What does your life look like?" Zara's professional mask slipped slightly. "I have family dinners every Sunday with my parents and my brother's family. I have close friends I see regularly. I volunteer at a literacy program on Saturday mornings. I date occasionally, though nothing serious lately." "Why not?" The question came out before Marcus could stop it. "Because I haven't met anyone who makes me want to rearrange my carefully balanced life." Zara smiled, but there was something vulnerable in it. "I learned the hard way that career isn't everything, but I also learned that I like my independence, my freedom to focus on work I love. It would take someone pretty special to change that." Marcus felt the air in the room shift, charged with something unspoken. "Zara, we should focus on your assignment for this week," she interrupted, her professional demeanor snapping back into place. "You have one more session left on your package. I want you to think about what comes next, not your next business venture, your next life move. What kind of life do you want to build? Marcus left feeling off balance, aware that his feelings for Zara had crossed some line from professional respect into something deeper. But she'd shut him down, made it clear that wasn't what this was about. That week, he threw himself into the assignment. He spent a whole day with his nephew and niece, taking them to the aquarium and learning their favorite colors and foods and games. He called his old roommate Josh and made plans to visit Columbia monthly. He joined a gym and actually talked to people in the locker room instead of rushing in and out. He went to a wine tasting with his neighbor, an elderly man who'd been inviting him for months. He started to understand what Zara had been pushing him toward. Life wasn't something that happened around work, it was supposed to be the main event, with work fitting into it. He'd had it backwards for years. His sixth and final session arrived too quickly. Marcus walked into Zara's office aware that this might be the last time he saw her. He could extend the coaching package, but he knew the real work was done. She'd given him the tools. Now he had to use them. "Tell me about your week," Zara said, and Marcus walked her through his various attempts at living like a normal person. "I think I get it now," he said finally. "What you've been trying to teach me, it's not about abandoning ambition or success. It's about making sure there's something underneath all that, something that matters more." "Exactly." Zara smiled, genuine pride in her expression. "So what comes next for you?" Marcus had been thinking about this all week. "I'm not going to jump into commercial real estate or residential development. I'm going to take some time, really think about what I want. Maybe travel, maybe just be still for a while. And then, when I'm ready, I want to build something that matters. Something small enough that I can be hands-on, that captures what I loved about hospitality in the first place." "That sounds perfect," Zara said softly. "There's one more thing." Marcus's heart was pounding. This was more terrifying than any business deal, any investment risk. "I need to tell you that these sessions have been about more than just career coaching for me. You've helped me see myself clearly for the first time in years, and in the process, he took a breath. I've developed feelings for you, real ones." Zara's expression shifted and he couldn't read it. The silence stretched out, agonizing. "Marcus," she finally said, "I have a strict policy about not dating clients. It's important to maintain professional boundaries, and I'm not your client anymore," he interrupted. "This is our last session. After today, you'll have fulfilled your contract." "That's not how it works." But Zara's voice was uncertain. "You came to me for help, and I provided professional services. Getting involved would be crossing a line. What if I'm not the only one who wants to cross it?" Marcus leaned forward. "Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you haven't felt anything these past few weeks, and I'll walk out of here and never bring it up again." Zara stood and walked to the window, her back to him. "It doesn't matter what I've felt. I'm your coach. I'm supposed to help you, not care about me, not see me as a person instead of just a client." Marcus stood as well. "Zara, you're the one who taught me that connecting with people, being honest about feelings, building real relationships, those things matter more than staying safe and professional. That's different." "How?" He moved closer but didn't touch her. "You spent 6 weeks teaching me to be vulnerable, to take emotional risks. Now you won't do the same." Zara turned, and he saw the conflict in her eyes. "If this goes wrong, I could lose everything I've built. My reputation, my practice. I can't date clients, people wouldn't trust me anymore." "Then I'll make it easy for you." Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. "I'm requesting a full refund of your coaching fee, all of it. That way I was never actually your client. Problem solved." "Marcus, that's crazy. It's the sanest thing I've done in years." He completed the transfer. "There, money's back in my account. You never coached me, I never paid you. We're just two people who met and talked for 6 weeks. That's not how. Zara stopped, shook her head. You can't just rewrite reality to get what you want. I'm not trying to get what I want. I'm trying to be honest about what I feel, which is exactly what you taught me to do. Marcus held her gaze. I'm not expecting you to fall into my arms or declare your feelings. I'm just telling you the truth. You've changed my life, Zara, not just by coaching me, but by being you. By caring, by pushing me, by seeing me. And if there's any chance you feel the same way, I need you to know that I'm willing to take the risk. Zara was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus felt his heart sinking. He'd miscalculated, pushed too hard, ruined everything. I'm going to regret this, she finally said, but she was smiling. I never mix professional and personal, and I have about 100 reasons why this is a terrible idea. But you're right. I have felt something these past weeks. I told myself it was just professional satisfaction, seeing you make such incredible progress. But it's more than that. She moved closer. You've surprised me, Marcus. When you first walked in here, I saw another arrogant businessman who thought money could solve everything. But underneath that, you're thoughtful and kind and willing to do the hard work of changing. That's rare. Marcus felt like he could breathe again. So where does that leave us? It leaves us taking things slowly, Zara said firmly. Real slowly. Because I meant what I said about my life being carefully balanced. I'm not going to rush into something just because we both feel it. I can do slow, Marcus said, though his heart was racing. I've spent the last 6 years rushing through life. Slow sounds perfect. They agreed to dinner the following week, a real date with no coaching agenda. Marcus left Zara's office feeling lighter than he had in years, like the world had opened up with possibilities he'd forgotten existed. He spent the following days in a strange state of anticipation and nerves. Josh laughed at him when he called for advice on where to take her. The great Marcus Hammond, nervous about a date. I wish I could record this. I'm serious, Marcus said. I haven't been on a real date in years. All my recent relationships were. He paused. Actually, I'm not sure I had relationships. Just people I saw occasionally between work commitments. Well, this girl sounds different, Josh said. Take her somewhere that means something, not just some fancy restaurant to show off your money. Marcus thought about that. What meant something to him? The hotel business had consumed his life, but before that, what had he loved? He remembered summers with his family at that mountain resort, evenings spent on the porch listening to live music. There was a place on Shem Creek, nothing fancy, where local musicians played and the seafood was fresh, and the whole thing felt authentic and real. That's where he took Zara the following Friday. She arrived in jeans and a simple blouse, her hair down for the first time since he'd met her, and Marcus felt his breath catch. This is perfect, she said, looking around at the casual waterfront restaurant with string lights and a small stage. I was afraid you'd take me somewhere stuffy and expensive. The old me would have, Marcus admitted, but I'm trying to be the new me. The one who actually knows what he likes instead of just doing what's impressive. They sat outside where they could hear the water and the music, and the conversation flowed easily. Zara told him about growing up in Charleston, about her close-knit family and her decision to leave law. Marcus shared stories about building his first hotel, about the dreams he'd had before ambition hardened into something colder. What made you reach out for coaching? Zara asked over oysters. Most people in your position would just jump into the next big thing. I woke up the morning after the sale went through and I felt nothing, Marcus said. I just made more money than I'd ever imagined, achieved everything I'd worked toward, and all I felt was empty. It scared me. That took courage to admit, Zara said. A lot of people would have just kept pushing forward, trying to fill the void with more success. I probably would have if my assistant hadn't staged an intervention. Marcus smiled at the memory. She told me I needed help, that she was worried about me. It was the kick in the pants I needed. A band started playing bluegrass with a fiddle that soared over the water. Zara's face lit up. I love this song. Dance with me, Marcus said impulsively. There's no dance floor. So, he stood and held out his hand. Since when do we need permission? Zara laughed and took his hand, and they danced right there next to their table, swaying to the music while other diners smiled at them. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd danced, couldn't remember the last time he'd done something spontaneous and joyful just because. This was what Zara had been trying to teach him. This feeling of being present, of connecting, of letting life happen instead of controlling every moment. They walked along the water after dinner, talking about everything and nothing. Zara told him about her volunteer work teaching adults to read, about the satisfaction of watching someone sound out their first full sentence. Marcus told her about his nephew falling asleep against his shoulder, about feeling like he'd found something he didn't know was missing. You've changed a lot in 6 weeks, Zara said. I'm impressed. I had a good coach. Marcus stopped walking, turned to face her. But Zara, I need you to know that this isn't gratitude talking. I'm not falling for you because you helped me. I'm falling for you because you're brilliant and direct and you challenge me to be better. Falling for me, Zara's voice was soft. That's a pretty strong statement for a first date. I know too much, maybe. But she was smiling. Ask me again in a few weeks. They started seeing each other regularly. Careful dates that turned into longer conversations that turned into Marcus realizing he wanted Zara in his life in a permanent way. But he forced himself to go slow, to let things develop naturally instead of rushing toward the next milestone like he'd done with his businesses. He met her family at one of their Sunday dinners, and her father grilled him about his intentions while her mother kept refilling his plate with more food than he could possibly eat. Her brother was suspicious at first, protective of his sister, but warmed up when Marcus spent an hour on the floor playing with his kids. He's different than I expected, Zara's brother told her later, not knowing Marcus could hear from the kitchen. I thought he'd be some arrogant rich guy, but he's actually decent. He's working on being more than decent, Zara said. He's working on being whole. Marcus took Zara to visit Rachel and his family, and his sister pulled him aside. I like her. She's good for you. You seem more like yourself than you have in years. I feel more like myself, Marcus admitted. I didn't realize how lost I'd gotten. 2 months into dating, Marcus decided on his next business venture. Not commercial real estate or residential development, but a single small inn on Sullivan's Island. Nothing fancy, just 10 rooms with personalized service and attention to detail. He'd be hands-on, would know every guest, would create that magical feeling he'd fallen in love with as a kid. He told Zara about it over breakfast at her apartment. It's probably a terrible investment from a pure returns perspective, but it's what I want to build, something small enough to matter. It sounds perfect, Zara said. It sounds like you. The inn became a labor of love. Marcus threw himself into renovations, into designing spaces that felt warm and welcoming instead of just impressive. He hired a small staff who shared his vision for hospitality as an art form. Zara helped him think through what he wanted to create, not as his coach but as his partner, the person who knew him best. The grand opening was a small affair, just family and close friends. Marcus gave a short speech about coming full circle, about remembering what mattered. He caught Zara's eye across the room and saw her pride, her love, written clearly on her face. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the inn was quiet, Marcus and Zara sat on the beach behind the property. The ocean was calm, the stars bright overhead. I couldn't have done this without you, Marcus said. Not just the inn, all of it, figuring out who I want to be. You did the work, Zara said. I just pointed you in the right direction. You did more than that. Marcus turned to face her. Zara, before I met you, I was successful but empty. I had everything and nothing at the same time. You taught me how to live again, how to connect, how to build a life that actually means something. And somewhere along the way, you became the most important part of that life. Marcus, I love you, he said simply. I'm in love with you. And I know it's only been a few months and we agreed to take things slow, but I need you to know that you're it for me. You're what makes everything else make sense. Zara's eyes were bright with tears. I love you too. I've been trying not to say it, trying to be sensible and professional and not rush into things. But you're right. You're it for me too. They kissed there on the beach, the waves rolling in, the inn glowing behind them like a promise of the life they were building together. The inn thrived in the way small, beloved places do. Word spread about the personal service, the attention to detail, the owner who remembered every guest's name and preferences. Marcus was happy in a way he'd never been during his empire-building days. He worked hard, but he also had time for Sunday dinners with both their families, for volunteering at Zara's literacy program, for long walks on the beach with the woman he loved. A year after their first date, Marcus proposed on the same beach where they'd first said I love you. Nothing fancy, just him and Zara and a simple ring he'd spent weeks finding vintage, unique, with a sapphire the color of her eyes. I want to build a life with you, he said. Not a business empire or a portfolio of properties. Just a real, messy, beautiful life full of the things that actually matter. What do you say? Zara was crying and laughing at the same time. Yes, obviously yes. They married the following spring in a small ceremony at the inn, surrounded by family and close friends. Josh was Marcus's best man, and he gave a speech about how Marcus had finally learned that the best investment wasn't in properties or returns, but in people and love. Zara's father toasted them both, his voice thick with emotion. When Zara left her law career, I worried she was throwing away her potential. But watching her help people find their way, watching her help Marcus find that success, that's what matters. Marcus's mother pulled him aside during the reception. You're happy, really happy. I can see it in your eyes. I am, Marcus said, watching Zara dance with her niece. I spent years chasing success, and it took hitting the top to realize I'd forgotten why I wanted it in the first place. Zara helped me remember. She helped you find yourself, his mother corrected. That's worth more than all the hotels in the world. Life settled into a rhythm that felt right. Marcus ran the inn with passion and care, and Zara continued her coaching practice. They talked about everything: their days, their dreams, their fears. Marcus continued journaling, a habit he'd maintained since those first sessions with Zara. And sometimes he'd read her entries about moments of joy or gratitude or love. 2 years into their marriage, Zara discovered she was pregnant. They hadn't been actively trying, but they'd talked about children, about building a family together. Marcus was terrified and elated in equal measure. What if I mess this up? He asked Zara one night, his hand on her growing belly. What if I turn into the same work-obsessed person I was before? What if I miss everything important? You won't, Zara said firmly. Because you're aware of that possibility, which means you'll fight against it, and I won't let you disappear into work again. We're partners, remember. Their daughter was born on a clear autumn morning with the ocean visible through the hospital windows. They named her Caroline after Marcus's grandmother, and when the nurse placed her in his arms, Marcus felt everything shift into place. This was what mattered. This tiny person, Zara exhausted and beautiful beside him, the life they were building together. Marcus scaled back his hours at the inn, hiring an assistant manager so he could be present for Caroline's first months. He changed diapers and walked the floor during late-night crying sessions and fell asleep with his daughter on his chest. Zara went back to work part-time, and they juggled schedules and childcare and all the chaos of new parenthood. "Remember when you thought you didn't have time for a personal life?" Zara asked one particularly exhausting evening after Caroline had finally fallen asleep and they'd collapsed on the couch together. "I was an idiot," Marcus said. "This is so much harder than running a hotel chain, but it's also so much better." Caroline grew, and the inn continued to thrive, and Marcus made sure to prioritize the things that mattered. He never missed Sunday dinners with family. He took Caroline to the beach and taught her to build sandcastles. He supported Zara's work and celebrated her successes. He stayed in touch with Josh and his other friends, making sure relationships didn't fall by the wayside. 3 years after Caroline was born, their son arrived, Thomas, named after Zara's father. The family chaos doubled, but so did the joy. Marcus would sometimes stand in the doorway of their home, watching Zara read to the kids or help Caroline with a puzzle, and feel overwhelming gratitude that his career coach had seen through his surface success to the empty man underneath. "What are you thinking about?" Zara asked one evening, catching him watching her and the kids. "That you saved my life," Marcus said simply. "Not metaphorically, actually. I was on a path to being rich and successful and utterly alone. You showed me another way." "We saved each other," Zara corrected, coming to wrap her arms around him. "You reminded me why I do what I do. You showed me that people can change, can choose meaning over money." "I chose both," Marcus pointed out. "The inn does well, but you measure success differently now," Zara said. "It's not about empire building or market share. It's about creating something meaningful and having time for what matters." She was right. Marcus measured success in Caroline's laugh, in Thomas's first steps, in Sunday dinners with extended family, in the satisfied comments from guests who felt truly cared for, in the quiet moments with Zara when they'd sit on their porch and watch the sunset over the water. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Marcus surprised Zara with a return trip to that first restaurant on Shem Creek. They sat at the same table, listened to the same style of music, and held hands across the worn wooden surface. "5 years ago, I hired you to fix my career," Marcus said. "And instead you fixed my entire life." "I didn't fix anything," Zara protested. "You did the work. We did the work together." Marcus squeezed her hand. "And I want to keep doing it together for the rest of our lives. You, me, the kids, the inn, Sunday dinners, beach walks, all of it. This messy, beautiful, real life we've built." "That sounds perfect to me," Zara said, her eyes shining with love and contentment. They danced again that night, right next to their table just like they had on their first date. Other diners smiled, and Marcus pulled Zara close, breathing in her familiar scent, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. This was what he'd been chasing all those years without knowing it. Not success or wealth or achievement, but connection and love and a life that mattered. Zara had been right from the very beginning. His career had been fine. It was his heart that needed work. And now, with Zara beside him and their family growing and a life full of meaning and purpose, Marcus's heart was more than fine. It was full, whole, and exactly where it belonged. Years continued to pass in that way good lives do, filled with ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because they were shared with the right people. Caroline started school, and Thomas learned to read. The inn became a beloved fixture on Sullivan's Island, the kind of place people returned to year after year. Marcus and Zara's families blended seamlessly. Sunday dinners expanding to include various cousins and aunts and uncles, a loud and loving chaos that felt like home. Marcus occasionally thought about his old life, the hotels and deals and relentless pursuit of more. It felt like remembering someone else entirely. That driven young man who'd measured worth in dollar signs and market share would barely recognize the person Marcus had become, a hands-on father, devoted husband, small business owner who knew every employee's birthday and every guest's favorite breakfast order. "You ever miss it?" Zara asked once, after Marcus had run into an old business associate who'd been impressed by how much smaller Marcus's current ventures were compared to his past empire. "Not even a little bit," Marcus said honestly. "I'd take one Sunday dinner with our family over a dozen luxury hotels. I'd take Caroline's school play over closing the biggest deal of my career. What I have now, this life, with you and the kids and work I actually care about, it's worth more than anything I built before." Zara smiled, that smile he loved, the one that said she understood completely. "Good answer." On their 10th anniversary, with Caroline now 9 and Thomas 6, Marcus and Zara renewed their vows on the beach behind the inn. Their children stood with them, Caroline holding flowers and Thomas fidgeting in his suit. Family and friends gathered as the sun set over the ocean. "10 years ago," Marcus said, his voice carrying over the sound of the waves, "I walked into your office thinking I needed career advice. But you saw what I couldn't see, that I needed to learn how to live. You challenged me, pushed me, and ultimately loved me into becoming someone I'm proud to be. Every good thing in my life started with you telling me my career was fine but my heart needed work. You were right, and I'm so grateful I listened." Zara's eyes were wet with tears. "10 years ago, I met a man who'd achieved everything and felt nothing. Watching you transform, watching you choose love and connection and meaning over endless ambition, it reminded me why I do what I do. You're my greatest success story, Marcus, but more than that, you're my greatest love. Thank you for doing the hard work of changing. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, their children cheering, their families applauding, the inn glowing behind them like a beacon of everything they'd built together. That night, after the party had ended and the kids were asleep, Marcus and Zara sat on their porch overlooking the ocean. The inn was quiet, a few lights still glowing in guest rooms where people were likely winding down after their own days of making memories. "This is it, isn't it?" Marcus said softly. "This is what happiness looks like." "This is what happiness looks like," Zara agreed, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Not perfect, not easy, but real, full of love and meaning and people who matter." Marcus thought about the journal Zara had given him all those years ago, now filled with volumes of entries about moments of joy and connection. He thought about how lost he'd been, how empty success had felt without anyone to share it with. He thought about the journey from that first uncomfortable session to this moment, a decade of growth and love and learning what actually mattered. "Thank you," he said, though the words felt inadequate for everything Zara had given him. "For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For not giving up when I was difficult. For teaching me that the best investment I could make was in people, in love, in life." "Thank you for being willing to learn," Zara replied, "for having the courage to change, for choosing us every single day." The ocean rolled on, constant and eternal, and Marcus held his wife close and thought about how lucky he was. Not lucky that he'd made millions, not lucky that his businesses had succeeded, but lucky that he'd found Zara. Lucky that she'd told him hard truths he needed to hear. Lucky that he'd been brave enough to admit his life needed work, and then do the uncomfortable labor of changing it. His career had been fine all along. But his heart had needed to break open, needed to let people in, needed to learn that love and connection and family mattered more than any empire he could build. Zara had taught him that. And in the teaching, in the opening up, in the choosing meaning over money, Marcus had found everything he'd been searching for. Not success, he'd already had that. Not wealth that came and went, but a life full of purpose and love and moments that mattered. A family who knew him and loved him. Work that fulfilled him without consuming him. Friends he made time for. A wife who challenged him and supported him and made every single day better just by being in it. This was the happy ending he hadn't known to dream of back when he'd walked into Zara's office, lost and searching. It wasn't the ending of anything, really just the beautiful middle of a life well lived, full of love and laughter, and all the messy, perfect moments that made up a meaningful existence. Marcus pulled Zara closer, breathed in the salt air, listened to the ocean, and felt grateful for every choice that had led him here. To this porch, this moment, this woman, this life. His heart had needed work, just like Zara had said. And in doing that work, in letting himself be vulnerable and open and real, Marcus had found something worth more than all the success in the world. He'd found home. He'd found love. He'd found himself. And that was the greatest success of all.